morning. It is early and the sun is bright. I was not planning the choral opening, but everything's just so freaking bright and saturated, and I don't know what's the camera and what's just the sun in my eyes. Good morning. How are you? I'm Dr. Times. That's a They Might Be Giants reference, by the way, if you're wondering where that line comes from. A song called Dr. Worm. So the video I posted last, An Evolution of Understanding, was probably a more grandiose title than the content. I don't know how well I don't know how cohesive those thoughts were, because when I started trying to make that video, I had way too many thoughts. And, you know, I just kept asking myself, what is it I'm trying to say? How am I trying to, what am I trying to convey? Too much was the answer, which is why the video I finally ended up making was probably about take 5. And I just kind of had to made myself do it so that it would be done. And all these other ideas that came to me while I was thinking about all that could maybe, you know, try and be their own things. So I wanted to do a video trying to focus more on the little things in my life, because as I've said, the deception in this reality is this reality. So the deception manifests in the people all around us. I was just online and some guy was talking about all the problems he'd had starting around 2012. And the first comment in that post was, you ever think it was all, have you ever considered the possibility that it's just all your fault? I'm like, oh, I'm so tired of that mindset. Because that is, you know, I talked a little bit last time about how they adapt, but they don't change. And that is one of the things that they do not change. Is just that consistent, no, it's you. No, it's you. It's also, where's my finger? There it is. No, it's you. Oh, pick my own nose. Shadow picking. Not from the bottom, though. Yeah, it's just one of those consistent, no, it's not. No, it's you. And especially when you're dealing with two of them, you'll have, you know, Boogeyman A being an asshole and Boogeyman B going, well, you should listen to that asshole. You deserve that assholery. And this is something I've seen, you know, numerous times in my life. Daniel was notorious about this. I would have girlfriends give me grief, and then afterwards he'd always be like, you know, you should really listen to her grief. You should. She's really got, she's really made some good points. Like, okay. So yeah, I wanted to just go through a few of the more bizarre little things in my life. This video might be the most boring thing ever, because it's going to be a dude talking about trivial shit, but there you go. Yeah, let's stick with that girlfriend. She was something else. She was always real quick to anger. She is definitely on my list of least favorite ex-girlfriends. She was always real quick to anger. The littlest things would set her off. But also with some of the strangest, like, her father was just kind of unstable by design. So he was a big source of stress in her life. And there was one evening that she was convinced that he had just completely lost it and done something horrible to her stepmother, because her parents had been separated quite some time, and remarried, obviously. And so, you know, for hours and hours, she's freaked out and she can't get a hold of anyone and she doesn't know what's going on. And finally, the next morning, she comes into the room where I was and makes a big deal about, okay, I'm going to call one more time and find out what's going on. And she calls her stepmother, and her stepmother answers, or at least the phone somehow gets answered. And all we hear on our end is this blood-curdling scream of like just pain, of just, the sound of someone in horrific agony. And then the phone goes dead. Like, that's all we hear. And so that is not what we were expecting, and certainly not, not what we wanted to hear. So we both, of course, just freak the hell out. And fast forward a couple hours later, and that girlfriend was just like, oh, I got a hold of my stepmom, and everything's fine. It was just a big misunderstanding. Don't worry about it. I'm like, what the hell was that scream? She's like, oh, she was just having an argument with my mom. I guess we called it a bad time, and it was one of those file away moments, one of those moments that my brain went, you're not going to understand this one right now, but you want to file away this moment. Because, I can't help but think about the logistics behind things. And so, I'm envisioning a situation where someone would have a cell phone, and just right at that perfect moment when we were calling, would happen to accidentally answer it while screaming in horrific pain and then going dead. I mean, like, nothing about that situation made sense to me at the time. It makes sense to me now. It's like when Daniel went to college, my mother made him care packages. When I went to college, my mother showed up, got drunk, and tried to embarrass me. Like, that didn't make sense to me at the time. It makes perfect sense to me now. And, Daniel's someone I have a long history with. I met him in junior high. We'd been on again, off again friends for quite some time. And when I went and did my homeless routine living in Denton, I ran into a mutual friend of ours, a guy named Carl, who would also later just completely turn on me. And Carl was like, hey, did you know Daniel's here in town? I'm like, oh, I had no idea. So I went and found him because, as far as I knew, he had no idea that I was in town. So I went and found him at his day job, which was at a bar. I mean, it wasn't like I walked into an accounting office or something. He came out to see me, and he had just had this terror in his eyes. And you have no idea what it's like to see someone you've known for 25 years, someone who knows you really well, and to have them have that look of terror. And, I'm a short geek pacifist of a man. This is not a look I'm used to. Nobody's afraid of me. Well, they are now, but it's only because of what's in here. And what's in here, it is what's in the heart that they envy. I think a lot about what motivates them, what drives them. I mean, ultimately, everything in this reality, from this bullshit from people to what we're sold as science. I swear I make air quotes a cajillion times more often in videos than I do normally. But, it's about God. It's about God and your divine nature. It's mostly about your divine nature more than it is about God. It's about making you forget where you came from, knowing that you would come into this reality forgetting everything. It is the trap that was laid for you to never get back there. But yeah, saw Daniel at his day job. He was absolutely terrified to see me. He gave me a business card, tried to shake my hand, and then I'm like, no, you give me a hug, you fat bastard. And he just was real like, okay, well, shoot me an email and we'll talk about getting together and doing something. And his first email that he sent me was like, hey, let's, go get a meal somewhere and catch up. And I responded to that with, oh, okay, great, sure. Normally we just hang out somewhere and smoke pot and shoot the shit. But if you really want to go to a public place to whatever reason, that's fine. I don't have any money, but because I'm homeless, but you can buy me lunch. I'm okay with that. And I got no reply for like 4 days, and then I finally got his email of, oh, I'm absolutely disgusted by how you've treated your mother, and I, don't think we'd be very good company because I've been seeing what you've been saying online, and you've just gone completely insane, but I'm never going to talk to you again. And I saw him around town a few times after that, and he would just avoid eye contact and pretend he didn't see me. All right. Whatever you want to do, dude, that is your decision. One thing that really, seeing my housemate get replaced by another entity who admitted to being another entity, it really makes you evaluate all the little stupid things that went on in the past, because sometimes the person you think you're dealing with is not the person you're dealing with. Because, the entity that replaced my housemate was a close enough facsimile that if I was not even going to, if I was not going to consider the option that could happen, that another entity could step in, I would never see it was true. Which is kind of why our culture is the way it is, why we have these defined rules of real and unreal, normal and normal. It's so you don't even consider what is true to be a possibility. But now that, I know I've seen it happen. Had an entity replace my housemate and apologize for doing so. It kind of changes your perspective. And I can remember one other day that my housemate came into my room with a guy he had hired to do some cleaning. And they both just started giving me grief about just nothing. And it was really weird to me at the time because it was so out of character for my housemate. Like, I didn't know the other guy, so I was just kind of like, apparently you got opinions, dude. Good for you. But it was so out of place for my housemate. And now I realize in retrospect that wasn't my housemate. That was one of them teaming up with another one of them to just be like, give this guy some grief. He spends most of his time hiding in a room. We don't get to give him much grief, so let's take advantage of this opportunity. What are you doing? Free work for other people? Screw you, buddy. That's all I did while I was horribly depressed. Sit around and write free code for Reddit, fuckers. And yeah, but another one of these times that I know it was one of them was I briefly lived with my aunt forever and ever ago, and when I moved out, I went to the post office and I filled out one of those address forwarding forms. And I asked the lady at the post office, hey, sometimes I get mail under my first name, sometimes under my middle name. Do I need to fill out 2 cards? And she goes, are you the only person at the house with your last name? I'm like, yeah. She's like, no, just check whole family, 1 card, you're set, you're done. I'm like, okay, cool, thanks. Not a moment I thought would come back. Like, of all the trivial stories I could tell, there's a story about me filling out paperwork at the post office. But fast forward about 4 or 5 months, and I get a phone call from my aunt, and she's just pissed that her Visa bill is late. And it was all my fault that her Visa bill was late because it was forwarded. That's what she said, because it was forwarded to me and she didn't get it because it had been forwarded. And I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. If it was forwarded, I have it. If it was going to be forwarded, I would have all your mail. And she was like, no, I went down to the post office and they showed me that card that you filled out for the address forwarding. And I'm like, wait. You didn't get your Visa bill, so your first course of action was to go to the post office and check to see if any mail was being forwarded, because you missed 1 piece of mail in 5 months, and they found that specific piece of paper that I filled out. She's like, yes, they showed it to me. I was just like, nothing about that makes sense. Why would you do that? How could they find this random? I mean, like, again, one of those situations where I started thinking about the logistics, and it just did not make sense. And so many stupid things, like once I was in the car with Carl as a teenager, and I was looking at the map upside down, and he laughed so hard about it then, and then he just kept bringing it up and bringing it up. Hey, do you remember that time you... Yes, dude, I remember that time. Even when I saw him back in Denton again, he's still like, hey, do you remember that time? I'm like, yes, dude, it was 23 years ago. I looked at a map upside down. Let it go. And I really didn't want him to be one of them. I was really... I mean, that's kind of the shitty thing about this knowledge, these revelations, is, you know, so many people that I thought were my friends, they weren't my friends. They were feeding off of me. In a weird little interaction with Carl. I mean, because he and I, when I ran into him living on the streets, we went back to his house, we hung out, it was great. We did that like 2 or 3 times, and it was just, you know, like old times, two friends chilling out. But then he just got real quiet, and the last time I heard from him was right before I left town, and I sent him a text message. I'm like, hey, dude, you know, I'm about to skip town. It'd be really cool if we could hang out one more time before I do. And he responded to my text with, yeah, that sounds great. Is this Chris? And I wrote him back. I'm like, yeah, it's me. You know, let me know when you're free. I'm a bum. My schedule's real open. And I never heard from him again. Like, no emails, no texts, nothing. That was the end. Just a quick little, oh, hey, is it you? And then silence. And that's sort of like hot, cold, you know, I've encountered that with so many people in my life. They're like, oh, you're really cool. We like you. Yeah, let's do, you know, something. You seem really interesting. And then just silence, the hot, cold treatment. And, you know, the reason I'm sharing all these little things is, you know, maybe they sound a little similar to some of these strange little events in your life. It's become pretty obvious that anything we put on a computer is known by them. Strange story with Carl. When I was a teenager, I had one of those good old, you know, an old DOS computer before the Windows days, where you had file directories and whatnot. And I left him alone with my computer for like 10 or 15 minutes or whatever, and he somehow found this directory that I had hidden away with just a bunch of bad teenage poetry in it. And he managed to write like 2 or 3 of his own just ridiculous kind of mocking little, you know, why would you write all these stupid poems, and left it there for me to find later. And again, at the time, I was like, how did you know that directory was even there? You know, it's not like I mentioned it. He had no way of knowing it, and it was stashed away in a weird little place that no one would ever go looking. But like I said, it's become pretty obvious that they know anything we put into a computer, mostly just because I've had things that I've typed in, or that I've been talking about online, I've had them repeated to me almost immediately in the real world. Most notably, I was writing about the 9/11 pattern and about how it all revolves around the number 16 somehow. And 10 minutes later, I was up at the community pool, and there was some guy there just going, I think the local supermarket's got 16 locations. Do you know about all 16 locations? And just like kept going on like that. I'm like, okay, dude, you really love your supermarkets. I get it. Because never take the bait. Never take, no reason to take the bait, nothing to gain from taking the bait. Never take the bait. Yeah, it's the little things. I don't really have a planned end for this. Are there any other weird stories or little things I kept meaning to share? There's always got to be something, but this is now 20 minutes, and, well, I got breakfast in the oven. So the deception in this reality. It is this reality. It is in those little things. And whenever you have those moments in your life where you can't believe someone knew something, you can't believe someone took someone else's side over an issues, those are situations where you are dealing with them. I mean, all these things, they have an agenda, they have a purpose, and it is the little things. I'm gonna go eat some potatoes. We love you all. Stay tuned.